why am I saying that no planes is a Psy-Op? Take Holmgren. Here's a fellow that releases all this information that is very compelling and attractive to intelligent people. He points out, he goes, say, look at these airplanes never took off. You see that the flights were canceled 10 days before. So all the intelligent people, stampede off to whatever website you go and check that out. And you say, wow, these flights were canceled. And then what you begin to find is after a while, this sort of gets tossed around and more people look at it. But before you get like a real big momentum, like it goes on the Johnny Carson show or something, all of a sudden it looks like they plugged that up on that website. But they plugged it up in such a way that it's an obvious patch-up. So what that does is it spreads out to the whole community this kind of, we really know what the truth is. Those flights were canceled, and see, they're covering it up. But over and above the information of covering it up, what you've done is you've alienated this group of intelligent people even farther away from the mainstream society, because at this point, if the mainstream society goes to those same websites, they're going to see the bandaged, corrected version. And that corrected version is going to be pleasing enough to the average mainstream society person. And then the original person that Holmgren had affected is going to say, well, I really know. But if they say that 2 weeks ago you could have seen that these flights were canceled on this website, the regular society, normal paradigm-believing member of society is going to think that the friend, because ostensibly this would be a friend that would be telling him this, is just a little bit out there with the conspiracy theories. And so then, but then Holmgren comes along and feeds some more information, saying, yeah, but look over here, and then you can see some other evidence that the flights didn't take off, and then the community looks over there, and then maybe you kind of get some recruits from mainstream society, so maybe the no-planer group starts to get a little bigger then. But then once again it gets patched up, and each time it's going to be patched up better and better until finally you have this pristine, all the tracks will be covered, because ultimately all the bandwidth is going to be controlled. And that's why the paradigm I try to put in front of people is look to where the real power is. And the real power is in capital ownership. Actually envision and imagine that you can have a connection of ownership with whatever the object might be. And this leads me, because I tell you I never know where I'm going to go when I start talking about things. The World Trade Center was the site of 13 African American slaves being burned alive. And if you think about that, I bet you anything, this is only theory and speculation, but for those who are up on their African American history, correct me in any way, I bet you those were African American slaves that actually had deeds and property in downtown Manhattan, which even in that day was very valuable. So if you burn these African Americans, you're sending a message out that when they start to reclaim the deeds, because at one time it was probably, practically useless land, even Manhattan, which we think of as so little, at one time was very big and there was a lot of land. So maybe at one time, maybe a freed slave could get some land and do some farming, but if he was clever and innovative and saving, he could start to have more property and power and wealth than maybe some of the white people. And then they get annoyed by this, because then with capital ownership and property, you can start to have political clout. And so by burning these people, if they were indeed property holders, you're sending a message out. If they take your property, that's it, just pack up and leave. And Victor says that his grandmother had to leave the South somewhere, and she wouldn't even talk about why. And I bet you anything it was some kind of strong-arming for capital ownership. Essentially what a deed means is that you are entitled and you are considered the lawful owner in the eyes of that society and the consensus of that society. But that deed has to be enforced by all of the rules and regulations of that society. So deed ownership, and so the reason that you would want to be handing out deeds is whoever owns the deed is going to stand behind who is enforcing that deed. So if you're talking about, Indians who were so thrilled with the beads that they got, and and that's why they gave away Manhattan or traded Manhattan, fair and square. That's why you want people to have deeds and thus be supporting this government as opposed to saying, hey, I don't recognize this government, I don't recognize this deed, just sort of throw away the paper. But by the time these African Americans actually had a lot of wealth, I think the only way to get rid of them was to burn them. Or to send that message out. And I think, believe me, I don't know a whole lot about it. I'm just making some suppositions that could have been happening. And I know that they talk about reparations. We always say the slavery situation. I think it meant capital ownership. So binary economics means recognizing that most of our wealth comes from capital. It does not come from labor. And in a place like YouTube, or considering these psychological operations, is the knowledge that you're getting from the operation or the body of knowledge something that is making you more joyful in life, more confident, more powerful, more capable of manifesting? If so, then go for it. If, on the other hand, there's certain things that you can't think, as soon as you introduce holograms into the no planes cult, you get dumped on. But after a while, when you get dumped on so much, you can kind of ignore that process and just go for the knowledge.